Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida Fair Tax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, August 9th, 2024. Iowa Senator Joni Ernst demands that Commissioner Werfel follow the law. In a letter to IRS Commissioner Werfel dated July 29, 2024, Senator Ernst stated, "Dear Commissioner Werfel, thank you for committing to trying to rebuild trust in the IRS by holding the agency accountable to taxpayers. Today is a great day to demonstrate the seriousness of that pledge by making the thousands of tax-evading tax collectors at the IRS either pay up or pack up." The Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration, or TIGTA, completed an investigation at my request that has identified thousands of IRS employees who owe tens of millions of dollars in unpaid taxes. Collectively, more than 5,800 employees of the IRS and its contractors were found to owe nearly $50 million in overdue taxes. Of the 3,323 IRS employees with unpaid taxes, 2,044 owing more than $12 million were not on a payment plan. Of the 2,484 IRS contractor employees with unpaid taxes, 1,729 of them, owing more than $17 million, were not on a payment plan. Despite the IRS having the statutory authority to terminate employees who willfully fail to file tax returns or understate their tax liability, just 20 employees found to be tax cheats were removed as a result. Over 500 former IRS employees with tax compliance issues or conduct and performance problems, including criminal misconduct, sexual misconduct, inability to perform duties, fighting and assault, and unauthorized access to tax return documents, they've been rehired by the agency and its contractors. Of these, 282 rehires had multiple previously documented conduct and performance issues. Government-wide, TIGTA found 149,000 federal employees owe an astounding $1.5 billion in unpaid taxes. Tens of thousands are repeat tax cheats, failing to file tax returns year after year, and the number is steadily increasing. There is absolutely nothing fair about forcing hardworking Americans to pay the salaries of tax-evading tax collectors, while the IRS targets lower-income and middle-class Americans with nearly two-thirds of the new audits. While the IRS warns tax evasion is a serious crime punishable by imprisonment, fines, and the imposition of civil penalties, the agency is doing nothing to punish the criminals on its own payroll. You currently have the authority to terminate employees for willful violations of tax law, but you aren't doing so. Surely the irony and hypocrisy can't be missed here. Taxpayers are being forced to pay billions more to the IRS to audit America, while the agency won't even collect tens of millions of dollars in unpaid taxes owed by its own employees. Section 1203 of the Internal Revenue Service Restructuring and Reform Act of 1998, that's Public Law 105-206, directs the IRS to terminate an employee for willfully failing to file a tax return or understating tax liability, but provides the commissioner with the discretion to mitigate the penalty. I am proposing the Audit the IRS Act, requiring regular tax audits of agency employees and prohibiting the IRS from hiring or continuing to employ tax evaders. I welcome your support for this bill that strengthens your ability to collect billions of dollars in unpaid taxes. I would also like to know what actions you are taking to ensure 100% tax compliance by IRS employees and contractors. To hold the IRS accountable and to demonstrate the agency takes its own warning that tax evasion is a serious crime, I would strongly urge you to routinely check the tax status of every employee and fire every employee and contractor who is delinquent on their taxes and not enrolled in a payment plan. Repeat offenders should be referred to the Department of Justice and subjected to imprisonment, fines, and imposition of civil penalties. The penalties listed as punishment for tax evasion on the IRS's own website. In conclusion, thank you, Senator Ernst, for exposing the hypocrisy of the elites in the IRS. These elites see themselves as superior beings that don't have to follow the laws that they impose on the rest of us ordinary citizens. As Senator Ernst demands, we can eliminate the IRS problems by adopting the fair tax. The fair tax is so simple that everyone can understand it and not have to hire a tax preparer to comply with it. It shows the cost of the federal government on every retail receipt so that all of us understand what we're paying and can determine if the benefits we're getting are worth the cost. It helps U.S. companies compete with foreign competitors and not move overseas. Keeps jobs in the U.S. rather than exporting them to other countries. That permanently establishes the solvency of Social Security and Medicare. That eliminates special treatment for any group of taxpayers. That benefits lower income groups more than the present income payroll tax system does, and allows each of us, not the elites and their minions, to determine the amount of federal tax we pay, and is the largest transfer of power from D.C. to the people since the Constitution was adopted. Now, D.C. is ignoring the one real solution that allows us to remain citizens and not subjects, the fair tax. The fair tax is simple, it's non-invasive, but most of all, it works. The American people will overwhelmingly support the fair tax if they're given the chance, and all of us will benefit. The solution? Pass the fair tax. Now, why would D.C. pass the fair tax and give up an almost unlimited source of donations? Well, they won't, at least not voluntarily. The only way they will is if the rest of us demand it. Now, isn't it time to end this ludicrous tax collection system and the IRS along with it? Now, there's going to be a vote on the fair tax in the House of Representatives. We now have the opportunity to force all members of the House to show where they stand. They can vote for the present income payroll tax system, or they can vote for the fair tax. They can support the corrupt income tax in the IRS, or they can vote to eliminate it. It can't be any simpler than that. They can hide the true cost of their government, or they can pass the fair tax and show everyone the true cost of government on every retail receipt. And finally, they can support the largest transfer of power from the government to the people, the fair tax, or they can vote against it. Now, if members think the fair tax needs to be amended to address a problem, they can propose the change. Don't let them get away with rejecting the entire bill because it has a perceived flaw that can be easily addressed, and if it's a real flaw, corrected in the final bill. And don't think for an instant there aren't any flaws in the income tax. Help us bring about real tax reform and stop future IRS abuses. By contributing or investing $10.40 a month, you help provide a financial base to Americans for fair taxation. Now, if you can make larger contributions/investments, these will be used not for salaries, as we're all volunteers, but for the needed updates to our economic studies, which will be vital for all future years. Please go to fairtax.org to invest in AFFT and help us pass the fair tax. It's an investment in your and your family's future.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at fairtax.org.